I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, it has taken over 5 years since September 11th for the administration to finally come to Congress and seek legislation establishing military tribunals to try terrorist suspects. For over 4 years now, many of my Democratic colleagues and I have urged this Congress to act in this area. 4.5 years ago, I introduced legislation. Other of my colleagues did the same, to establish military tribunals. And we introduced that legislation for 2 reasons. First, because we should detain people who mean to harm our country, who mean to injure our citizens. And second, because the administration's unilateral act in establishing these commissions was on the most dubious of constitutional grounds. And we didn't want to be where we are today 5 years hence, with a system that was struck down by the Supreme Court, with people who have not been brought to justice. But here we are. It's taken the majority and the administration 5 years to get here, but here we are. Terrorists who seek to harm this country must be captured. They must be tried, detained, and punished to protect our country. And there is a way to detain them, to gather valuable intelligence from them, to try and convict them without sacrificing our ideals as a nation. We are at war with a vicious enemy who seeks to destroy our way of life. It is a military fight, but in a broader sense, it is also a war of ideas. America has always been not only a nation, it has been an idea. And when we sacrifice that idea, it is a setback in this war of ideas. And so we have to ask ourselves, where does this position us? Where does this bill position us in the war of ideas? Are we advancing or are we retreating? When we are perceived as abandoning the rule of law, when we are perceived as defining down what it means to be cruel or inhuman or degrading, when we wonder out loud in the legislative process whether a nation so conceived as ours can long endure without cruel and inhuman treatment. May I have an additional minute?
The gentleman's recognized. 1 minute.
When we show to the world that we are questioning the very idea of America, whether this nation can long endure with a respect for the rule of law, with respect for the concept that people who are detained by America will not be mistreated, that people detained by America will have a right to confront evidence against them, will have the sacred right of habeas corpus. When we put forward legislation that says that an American can be plucked off the street, given a label unilaterally by any administration, by this president or the next, as an unlawful enemy combatant, and all their rights evaporate once they're given that label, that calls into question the very idea of America. And that, I believe, is a setback in the war of ideas. We can do better than this bill, and in fact, on Friday, we had better than this bill when Senator Warner and Senator McCain came forward, which I thought was a sound compromise.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman's recognized. 30 seconds.
We had a sound compromise on Friday. During the weekend, that unraveled. During the weekend, I think we took a step back in the war on ideas. It was not an irrevocable step back. The majority in the administration has waited 5 years to bring us legislation on this subject. Let's take another 5 days, if it takes it, to get it right. We shouldn't be retreating back to our districts just because of our election and leaving the work undone or done poorly. And I regret to say that this bill is done poorly, and it must be changed. And I yield back.
Gentleman from California.
I want to take 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker, just to remind my friend who just